I never really planned to show everyone how successful I was at Marceline's wedding. Honestly, I didn't even want to go. Weddings were always big, noisy, and full of people who loved to talk about each other. But Mom wouldn't let me stay home. She said, "It's your sister's big day, Selara. At least show up looking nice." I sighed and knew I had no choice. So I went. I wore a simple navy blue dress, not too fancy, and shoes that clicked softly on the marble floor but didn't scream boardroom. I practiced a quiet smile for years, and tonight, I wore it perfectly. The Grand Plaza Hotel, where the wedding was happening, was as huge and fancy as I expected. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, shining like ice on a winter morning. The light bounced all around the room, making everything sparkle. Long tables were covered with roses in shades of red and pink, mixed with little golden candles. Waiters floated across the ballroom carrying trays of champagne, moving carefully between the crowd without bumping into anyone. Marcelline had always loved things that looked perfect. Everything about this wedding was her idea of a masterpiece. I didn't need to look around to know that the flowers, the lights, and the decorations were all her doing. I stayed near the back of the room, close to the big marble pillars, away from the center of attention. That was always my place in the family, there but unnoticed. Present but not seen. Invisible like a shadow following the others. From across the room, I could hear bursts of laughter and the clinking of glasses as guests congratulated Marcelline. She had always been ambitious, but tonight, she looked like the queen of the ballroom. She was the youngest vice president at Sterling Industries, and now she was married to Darian Voss, whose father was the CEO. Everyone in the room seemed to admire her. Everyone, that is, except me. Mom found me just when I thought I'd be left alone. "There you are," she said, her voice sharp like a pin scratching against glass. Her dress was perfect, just like always. "Why are you hiding back here? People have been asking about you." "I'm just looking around," I said lightly, sipping my champagne. I didn't want to get into a fight or explain too much. Her eyes flicked over my outfit. "You look fine," she said, her lips pressed together in a line. "But you could have worn something more polished." Marceline's wedding was a big event, bigger than anything I had ever been to. I nodded and said nothing, biting back words I had trained myself not to say. Just yesterday, I chaired a board meeting that would determine the future of a Fortune 500 company. Big deals, huge numbers, important people. It had all been in my hands. But no one here knew that. As far as my family was concerned, I worked for a small consulting company. Nothing serious. Nothing impressive. That's how I liked it. Until tonight. Mom sighed dramatically. "Consulting is okay, but it's not a success. Not like Marceline's success." She shook her head, her hair bouncing, and her pearls clinked softly. Marcelline had become a VP at Sterling before turning 30. Now she is married into one of the richest and most powerful families in the business world. That, Mom said, was what real success looked like. I smiled politely and felt the weight of the antique locket around my neck. My grandmother had given it to me years ago, the only person who ever really believed in me when everyone else doubted me. The locket was small and simple, but it carried a heavy reminder that I had my own path, one I didn't need to explain. "Sure, Mom," I said softly. "That's one kind of success." She didn't hear me. She was already turning toward the crowd, drifting back to Marceline's spotlight, and I stayed in the shadows a little longer. The spotlight, it was about to shift. And no one, especially Marcelline, was ready. "Selara." Her voice boomed across the ballroom, louder than the music. Marcelline, flawless in her custom-designed gown, glided toward me holding a glass of champagne in one hand and Darian, her new husband, in the other. Her smile was sharp, like the edge of a knife. "Still hiding in corners at parties?" she asked, leaning in slightly so nearby guests could hear. Some of them giggled. Darian chuckled, clearly amused. Marcelline continued. "She told me you still work at that tiny firm. What's it called again? Rainbow Consulting or something." "Aurora," I corrected calmly, my voice soft but firm. Marcelline waved her hand dismissively. "Right, that boutique one. Still doing small business workshops and freelance stuff." "That's cute." My fingers tightened around my glass, but I kept my tone even. "It keeps me busy," I said. Marcelline leaned in slightly, just enough for the guests close by to hear. "You know, Mom and Dad were worried about you for a while. No husband, no real career. But at least you're trying. Independence counts for something, even if it doesn't pay much." Darian laughed louder this time. Marcelline added, "She's fierce, though. I always thought Selara was the smart one, just didn't turn it into success, I guess." The words didn't hurt me the way they used to. Not anymore. I had heard versions of this story my entire life. Back in high school, I was an overachiever. Valedictorian, scholarships, summer programs. Marcelline, on the other hand, barely tried, but she had charm. Charm opens doors when paired with the right connections. Dad had made some phone calls, got her an entry-level job at Sterling, and from there she climbed. Not because she was the smartest, but because the room had already been prepared for her. Meanwhile, I was always told to be realistic. Ambition is great, Selara, but someone has to do the smaller jobs. Not everyone can be a leader. Even now, Marcelline was playing her role perfectly. The golden child, the center of attention. And I was still the other daughter. She clinked her glass against mine with a bright smile. Well, here's to you, sis. May your little company bring you joy if not money. I smiled back. Oh, it does, I said. More than you know, because what they didn't know was everything. As the night wore on, the ballroom glowed warmer and richer. The champagne flowed freely, laughter grew louder, voices blending into a hum of celebration. Marcelline soaked in every compliment, every glance of admiration, while I quietly observed from the sidelines. Then came the moment she had been waiting for. She stepped onto a small platform near the band and tapped her glass with a spoon. The room quieted. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight, Marcelline beamed. Especially since someone very special is joining us shortly. Alaric Fenwick, the CEO of Sterling Industries, has agreed to stop by. He never attends employee events, but tonight, she shrugged with mock humility. I guess I'm not just any employee. Polite applause followed, murmurs of admiration from the crowd. Marcelline glided past me, whispering, Alaric is here because he values what I bring to the company. Some of us actually make things happen, you know. I didn't reply. I did know. I knew exactly why Alaric Fenwick was coming. He had been too busy trying to get a meeting with my company's CEO. I had delayed on purpose, letting them worry and sweat. Little did they know, the CEO he wanted to see was standing right here in this ballroom, in a navy blue dress, me. Then it happened. The double doors swung open. A hush rippled through the room, like someone had suddenly pressed pause on the music. Alaric Fenwick entered, tall and silver-haired, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. He didn't have to shout, he didn't have to make a sound. Everyone noticed him immediately. Marcelline straightened, tugging Darian beside her. She looked like a student meeting the principal for the first time. But Alaric didn't glance at her. His eyes locked on me. Surprise flickered across his face, then recognition, and then something else. He walked forward, brushing past Marcelline and Darian without even looking at them. Mr. Mitchell, he said warmly, extending his hand. I didn't expect to see you here. Dead silence. My family froze. Mom's glass hovered midair. Darian looked from Alaric to me and back, clearly confused. Marcelline's perfect smile faltered. I accepted his handshake calmly. Alaric, I said. Good to see you, he replied, smiling. We've been trying to reach you for weeks. If I had known you were here, I would have sent the proposal straight to the wedding. I could feel every eye in the room on us. Marcelline's wedding had just become my stage. She blinked, frozen mid-step. Wait, you two know each other? She asked, her voice rising slightly. Alaric finally noticed the bride. Oh, you must be the one who works at Sterling, he said. Marcelline forced a smile. Yes, I'm Marcelline Mitchell. Selara is my younger sister. There was a pause, and then Alaric asked casually, You didn't tell me your sister was the CEO of Aurora Consulting. Marcelline blinked. I'm sorry. What? Alaric frowned slightly. You didn't know? He looked back at me, awkward now. I took a sip of champagne and smiled politely. They knew I worked in consulting. I never said more, and no one asked. Silence exploded through the ballroom louder than any music. Darian stepped forward, stammering. Wait, you run Aurora? I nodded. Founder CEO. Marcelline's jaw dropped open, but no sound came out. My mother dropped her clutch. You told us it was a small firm, she whispered. It started small, I said calmly. 12 years ago in a shared office in Queens. Now we advise half of the Fortune 500 companies. Alaric nodded. Your company has been a major player for years. We've been pushing for a meeting to discuss a merger. Sterling is in a tight spot financially, and Aurora has what we need. Marcelline's voice finally returned, but it cracked under the weight. Merger? What merger? I looked at her directly. Aurora has been thinking about acquiring Sterling for months. You didn't know? No, she said, shrill now. No one told me. I met her eyes. Maybe because you never saw me as someone important. Just your little sister with a cute job. Darian looked pale. So, you're the one our board has been desperate to reach. My smile turned cold. That's right. Marcelline took a step back, as if the marble floor had tilted beneath her. And in that moment the room, which had been all glittering lights, laughter, and celebration, became mine. Everyone finally saw me, not just as Selara, the quiet sister, but as Selara, the one who had been quietly running one of the most important companies in the country, all while Marcelline had shone under the spotlight. Around us, everyone at the wedding was shocked. They didn't know what to do. Some people stared with wide eyes. Some whispered quietly to each other. A few even pulled out their phones to record what was happening. My parents just stood there. They didn't move. They looked frozen. Their favorite child, Marcelline, the one they always thought was the most special, had just been outshined. And the one they had never really noticed, the one they always underestimated, was finally getting the attention. The spotlight that Marcelline loved so much was shining on the person it should have been shining on all along. A few minutes later, I went into a small room next to the main ballroom. It was a fancy room, with thick velvet curtains and soft chairs. Usually, this room was for the bride and her friends to rest before the ceremony, but now it felt like a secret meeting room. Marcelline, Darian, my parents, and I were all there. There was no crowd, no cameras, just 4 faces I had known my whole life, now staring at me like I was a stranger. You couldn't wait, could you? Marcelline hissed. Her voice was sharp. Her makeup was still perfect, but she looked angry, and I could see her composure starting to crack. You just had to ruin my wedding. I didn't plan this, I said calmly. You brought Alaric Fenwick here to impress your guests. I just happened to be the person he was trying to meet. Don't twist it, she snapped. You blindsided me. You made me look stupid in front of everyone. I turned to my parents. Mom, Dad, anything to say? They exchanged a quiet glance. My father cleared his throat. Selara, honey, you should have told us. We didn't know. No, I said. You didn't ask. For years, you never asked because you were too busy giving everything to her. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We were trying to help her get started. She needed our support. And I didn't get any support, I said, my voice bitter. I was working 80-hour weeks, eating cheap instant noodles, building something from nothing. Meanwhile, you co-signed Marcelline's apartment lease and paid for her MBA using money from my savings account. My father's face stiffened. We always meant to pay you back. You never did, I said, because you didn't think I would amount to anything. And now that I have, you are scrambling to rewrite the past, like none of this matters. Marcelline folded her arms. You think you're better than us now? She asked, her voice small, almost scared. No, I said softly. I always was. You just refused to see it. Darian looked like he wanted to disappear. My mother took a shaky step forward. Selara, we made mistakes. We were trying to protect you. The business world is cruel, especially to women. And yet here I am, I said. Standing strong, thriving, running the company that is about to save your precious Sterling Industries from collapse. The room went so quiet it felt heavier than the velvet curtains around us. Marcelline sank into a chair, her face pale, shocked. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small in my family. I felt exactly as big as I was. I felt strong. I felt powerful. 2 weeks later, I walked into the sleek, shiny boardroom of Sterling Industries. The building was filled with glass walls that shone in the sunlight. Everyone had told me all my life that this company was the best, the gold standard of success. Today it was mine to change and reshape. I wore a smart black suit. It fit perfectly. It wasn't just clothes, it was power in fabric form. Gone was the wedding dress and the quiet, small smile. Now I had posture, purpose, and presence. The board members were already sitting at the table. They whispered to each other as I walked in. Their faces showed curiosity, worry, and a little fear. They all knew who I was now. Alaric Fenwick stood at the head of the table and gestured to the chair beside him. Miss Mitchell, he said with a polite nod. Shall we begin? I sat down, opened my notes, and looked around the room. In the past few months, I began, Aurora Consulting has carefully reviewed Sterling Industries, its money, the leadership, and where it has problems. We have reached a conclusion. Sterling has potential, but it has been managed by favoritism and family ties, not by skill or talent. That ends today. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. I continued. From now on, jobs and roles will be given based on skill, performance, and vision, not on who your parents are or who you know. Behind the glass, I could see my parents and Marcelline watching like they were in a courtroom. Marcelline looked smaller than I had ever seen her. No longer the golden girl in the spotlight, she was just another employee waiting to find out where she really stood. As of next quarter, I said, we will implement a complete departmental reorganization. Redundant leadership roles will be removed. Talent will be promoted from within, based on actual contribution. We are not here to punish anyone. We are here to build something lasting. And building something lasting means letting go of the idea that a last name is a qualification. The room went quiet for a moment. Then slowly, one by one, heads began to nod. Alaric leaned over and whispered, "You're more ruthless than I imagined." I smiled. Not ruthless, just clear-eyed. "And your sister?" he asked. "She will be given a job offer," I said. "Entry level. She can work her way up if she is willing to earn it." Behind the glass, Marcelline looked down at the floor. For the first time in this building, I wasn't the underdog. I was the boss, the one in charge. The next morning, the new contracts were sent out. One went to Marcelline, one to my father, who still held an advisory role he hadn't earned, and one to my mother, who had spent years insisting I didn't have the business skills my sister had. They didn't respond for 2 whole days. On the 3rd day, Marcelline came to my office. Gone were the fancy heels, the smug smile, and the air of invincibility. She wore simple flats, and her hair was in a loose bun. She looked real, human for the first time. "Do you really mean it?" she asked. "Entry level, starting over," I nodded. "That's how it works at Aurora," I said. "We build from the ground up." Her voice cracked as she said, "I don't know if I can do that." "Then don't," I said gently. "You have a choice." She looked down, then back up. "I want to try. I don't want a handout. I want to be good enough on my own." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. Something real. Later that week, my parents came in. Not to beg. Not to argue. Just to talk. My mother's voice shook as she said, "We were wrong about so many things, but mostly about you." I didn't need forgiveness. I just needed the truth, and now I had it. The rest didn't matter. That night, alone in my office, I pulled open the top drawer of my desk. Inside was my grandmother's locket. I opened it and found a tiny note she had written when I was 23. Struggling, broke, and unsure if any of this would ever work. Success isn't about who believes in you in the end. It's about who believes in you at the start, yourself. She had believed in me when no one else did. Now the world believed too. But that wasn't the victory. The real victory was that I had never needed anyone else's belief. As I looked out over the city skyline, I realized something very important. All those years of people underestimating me didn't break me. They built me. I wasn't the family disappointment. I wasn't small or weak. I was the storm they didn't see coming. And I had only just begun. I smiled to myself. For the first time, I felt free. Free from their judgment. Free from their doubt. Free to build the life I had always wanted. And I knew no matter what happened next, I was ready. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. I wasn't just part of the family. I was the one who had shown them all what strength really looked like. And that feeling, being strong, being powerful, being me, was the best feeling in the world.